20th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge
pledge
allegiance
to the
flag
of the
of the United States of America and to the republic
for
which it stands, one nation,
under God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome you to a meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that the advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung at which formal action may be taken. This meeting is being conducted remotely using communication technology. Instructions for joining the meeting and participating in public comments have been posted on the district website and sent to Watchung Borough and the Watchung Public Library, as well as to the school community through an email blast. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda at points in the meeting, provided for the public to assist the board, to address the board. Recording or photographing other than for private personal use requires the consent of parents/guardians whose children may be included in the image. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barbella, Mr. Buccarelli, Mrs. Harvey,
Here.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Here.
Mr. Kraft,
Here.
Mr. Mattiasi,
Here.
Mrs. Morales,
Here.
Mrs. O'Donnell, Mrs. Scharf.
Here.
We have 6 board members present.
Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
This is Joe Mattiasi. I have a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Pepe, will you please read what we will be discussing in closed session? Whatever checked off.
Yep, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-11, permits the Board of Education meet in closed session to discuss certain matters. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Education adjourns to closed session to discuss a matter rendered confidential by federal or state law, student matters. Further resolved, the minutes of this closed session will be made public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Closed session may be followed by an open session where action may be taken.
I would just like to remind all the board members to make sure you leave the Zoom meeting before dialing into the executive session. And Mr. Pepe, if our community stays on the Zoom call, can you or Manny please put up something in Word that states that we're in an executive session, just in case anybody gets in, after now, they kind of know that that's what's happening. Are you guys able to do that?
I'll ask Manny to take care of that.
Okay, great. Okay.
All right.
Everyone left. I'll be leaving just a second. I'm just watching for Manny to put up.
Hey, Rich, it's Jill.
Hey, John.
I believe Gail just came on.
Thanks. Where is she? Yeah, looks like Jessica's still on too. All right. Gail, if you can hear me, actually what we need you to do at this point is log out of this meeting and go to the Google Hangout for the executive session.
Joe Mattiasi needs to be unmuted.
Yeah, I just asked Manny to unmute Joe.
Thank you.
I don't see Joe Barbella yet.
Yes, Joe Barbella is in. He needs to be unmuted. Okay, we are almost there. I think everyone's in. We're just getting them audio and video, and then we'll be ready to go. And now you can see me.
I think Jessica needs her mic to be unmuted too.
Okay? Thank you.
And
Yes.
Did Adam get on? Oh, yeah, I see. Let me know, Rich.
Dory, was that you that just spoke?
Yeah, that's me. Can you hear me?
Not very well. It's very quiet.
You mean I'm very quiet? My voice is very low?
Yes.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. You let me know when you want to start.
Okay, I'm trying to get Adam. I see Adam in, but he doesn't have video and audio yet. Wait,
Okay.
wait. Is he there? Okay, Adam has video now. He just needs audio. If you don't mind, I'd like to do another roll call just to make sure we all can hear each other.
Sure.
All right. It looks like Adam's good. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's it. We're all present. So I'm just going to do a quick roll call, and then we can have a motion to return to from executive session. Mr. Barbella?
Yes.
Mr. Bockelli is absent. Mrs. Ingracia?
Yes, here.
Mr. Kraft?
Here.
Mr. Mattiasi?
Here.
Mrs. Morales?
Here.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes, here.
Mrs. Scharf?
Here.
And Mrs. Harvey?
Here.
Okay, good news. We can hear everybody. Get back to business.
All right, great. Can I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved, Gail.
And a second?
Second.
What was that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Board member comments. Are there any board member comments?
I have one comment just off of our last meeting. Well, first of all, I also wanted to just acknowledge how difficult all of this has been for our district families. And I know all the board too is under the same stresses and pressures, and so are our teachers. So everything that they've had thrown at them during this time obviously has been very difficult. I wanted to make a comment about all the feedback that we've been receiving, and that I find it very helpful, and that I'm in favor of the more feedback, the better. And to that end, I know we discussed a feedback survey, which I was strongly in favor of. I did want to clarify though, because I think there might have been some confusion that there was also a discussion about a climate survey, which the board had authorized a year ago in May, as a general state of the district and what's the status quo, to get a gauge of that. And I wanted to just clarify that I was not suggesting to do a climate study at this very odd time. So, while I'm definitely in favor of all the feedback we can get on the distance learning, which is obviously the only really thing that's going on right now in the district, I'm not in favor. And I don't know if anyone, thought that we were going to do a comprehensive climate survey, but I would certainly recommend not doing that at a time when literally nothing is normal in the district. I don't think we'd get the appropriate response or really an accurate picture of people's feelings on really anything during a global pandemic and an impending economic recession. So just wanted to clarify my thoughts on that issue and thank everyone for their patience in this crazy time.
Any other comments?
This is Gail. I just wanted to say that during this time, mostly is just to get ideas from parents and staff on what's working, what's good, and what might be advantageous as we move forward. I think those are good things to be asking out there at this time. A lot of schools, at this point might be doing a few surveys along that line. The climate is definitely something we have to sit down and work together to pull something together for that. That's a big project.
Anyone else have any comments? I just wanted to, this is Dory, I just wanted to say that I appreciate all the Watchung residents and the first responders in following the governor's distance guidelines. And I wanted to thank everybody for their perseverance during these times, especially the students, the parents, the staff, and the administration. And I send my condolences to anyone who has lost someone during this time. And I know we hear this a lot on the news, but we are stronger together, and we're going to get through this. So if there's no other comments, I'll move on, or is there anybody else? Okay, superintendent's remarks.
Thank you, Mrs. Harvey. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Yes, it indeed is strange and peculiar times, and we're doing our best under the circumstances. I've been communicating regularly with the community by email, as the public knows, and we'll continue to do that going forward. It might not be every day as it got to a few weeks ago, but at least on a weekly basis. I'm updating the board frequently on an almost daily basis and communicating on a daily basis. I'm also meeting regularly with superintendents in the county and the executive county superintendent. We have meetings twice a week. I had one today. We're exchanging ideas, trying to solve some of these problems, which are very new and challenging. I'm conferring and meeting with the regional superintendents also. We're all dealing with similar unprecedented challenges. We have laws that have been passed, and we regularly receive guidance from the DOE. At times, the guidance changes or is superseded by new laws. So we've been forced to adapt and adjust and do the best we can under the circumstances. We're making sure we're compliant with all the laws and the guidance. With the governor's most recent announcement, we've canceled all field trips and activities through May 15th, but I have to say it seems unlikely that we'll be able to take any of those trips afterwards if we are in fact back in school in June. We're discussing ideas for the promotion ceremonies and trying to brainstorm about spring concerts or art shows if there's anything we can do to continue with those if we are back in school in June, or maybe other ideas for sharing student work. As I've said before, the distance learning plan will continue to evolve. We've received feedback from families at the special meeting last Thursday and through email, and that feedback is being considered carefully and thoughtfully. There are also plans to share a survey with you. You'll have updates from your child's principal this week. Thank you for your patience and understanding as we continue to deal with the challenges of this very difficult time. I want to thank the staff for their collaborative spirit, their openness to change, and their commitment to their students and families. I'm going to ask Mr. Toto to share some updates about the steps we've taken with special education and related services based on some changes in the law. And then the principals will give their monthly reports and share highlights of the distance learning at their schools. So if we could unmute Mr. Toto so she could present her remarks.
Okay, Mr. Toady, you have sound now.
I do, thank you. I just wanted to start by providing some updates on special services. Our special services plans for distance learning were developed through communication and collaboration with our district staff and administration, as well as the Somerset County Supervisor for Child Study Team, our Somerset County administrators and directors of special services, and also the Morris Union Jointure directors of special services. And while there's been so much collaboration and communication among all of those professionals, our plan is obviously going to need to look a little different so that it's based on the individual needs of our students. When the district moved to our distance learning plan, our special education teachers were following the distance learning plan for their grade levels. So for pre-K through 4, that meant that our teachers were sending home packets of paper activities for our students for what we anticipated would be a 3-week period of time. That's evolved over the past several weeks to include some pre-recorded videos, some emailing and communication with parents, and also some live sessions for the students in our older grades. That also included our special education teachers participating in their Google Classrooms so that they're able to provide whole class learning activities and also individualized and modified work as well. The department is still attempting to hold IEP meetings. So if an IEP meeting needs to be scheduled, the case managers will reach out to the parents and obviously encourage them to collaborate at the time that the IEP meeting is required to be held, and to do so virtually. When those meetings are held virtually, a Google form is being used to capture attendance of all participants for that meeting. If the meetings were done in person, obviously everyone would be signing in, but a Google form is our next best available resource at this time. If a parent chooses to have an annual review meeting virtually, that doesn't preclude them from having an in-person meeting as soon as we're back in our buildings and able to meet in person. So we could always have another meeting at any point in time. Any child study team evaluations that parents gave consent for obviously cannot be completed at this time. So again, as soon as our buildings are reopened and our staff have access to our students, those evaluations will continue from there. Probably one of the biggest changes in our distance learning plan has to do with related services. When the district left school and our distance learning plan began, there was actually legislation in the state that prohibited any related services from being done virtually, remotely, through any sort of teletherapy. Since then, the governor has signed legislation that temporarily allows school districts and IEP teams to consider the appropriateness of appropriateness and the safety of providing those related services via virtual or remote or telepractice or any sort of online platform. So all of our related service providers and child study team members had a virtual meeting similar to this, and a letter was created that they would share with parents and make recommendations collaboratively for whether a virtual platform could be used to provide services such as speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, or counseling, or even behaviorist support at this time. As of today, we have had some parents that have consented to moving towards a virtual live online session for some of their related services in both schools. So we are moving in that direction, and our therapists will continue to have those conversations with parents and as appropriate, schedule them so that they're most meaningful for our students. Extended school year. This is typically the time of year when we would be, scheduling our extended school year program. At this time, we are preparing both an in-person and a distance learning extended school year because we just don't know where we're going to be a few months from now. So the ESY positions have all been posted on the district website. Applications have been received and are being reviewed. And a virtual hiring process will be used over the next few weeks so that we have staff in place and approved for that extended school year program. April is Autism Awareness Month. The t-shirt orders that were placed through the Special Education Parent Advisory Group before the schools closed were received and delivered thanks to Dave Walker, our Buildings and Grounds Supervisor, and his staff. The CPAG was planning a number of activities in support of Autism Awareness Month, which had to be postponed at this time. Our behaviorist and our preschool ABA teacher have put together a list of resources for staff and activities for students that will be shared over the next couple of weeks this month. But I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I have on my Autism Awareness Month t-shirt. And finally, as always, I encourage our parents with any questions or concerns to contact their child's teachers and therapists, the case managers, and me, so that we can work together to come to some solutions for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Toto.
This is Dory. I just had a quick question. I know you mentioned the IEPs. Can you give us a little update on 504s as well?
That would be a question for the principals, since 504s fall under the principals.
Okay. You don't have any, you don't work with, okay, gotcha. Okay, I guess when the principals speak, hopefully they'll preemptively touch on those items if possible. It would be nice to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We could unmute Principal Kidd.
I unmuted myself.
Oh,
Mrs. Harvey, what is your question about 504s before I start my spiel?
Just that I know that, 504s are somewhat different than IEPs, but I believe that, that they get, I think possibly renewed every year and whatnot. And just making sure that the principals are in contact, I mean, just as much as I guess the child study team is doing with the IEPs, that they're in contact with those parents and either updating the 504s or that there are, if there's any meetings that are conducted, that those are happening as well. And the students are getting whatever modifications are needed for their 504 plans.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to following the 504s, like you said, we've been making updates. Our counselor, Ms. McLeod, she's amazing. She's in touch with the parents all the time. She's consulting with the teachers and myself. We have meetings. We've had to put in a few emergency 504s for students because of things that may have popped up with this new lifestyle that we're living. So we're constantly looking at that, and those needs are being addressed. It's, we haven't put that on the back burner for any students. I mean, just like Mr. Toto was saying, our goal is really to give the students the services they need to be successful and to continue their learning. So was there anything else specific that related to 504s that you wanted to know about?
Nope, that was it. Just, just that we didn't forget about them.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And ESL services are still continuing. We haven't forgotten any of those categories of students that need some modifications and accommodations. So I'm going to start. Good evening to everyone. I hope that everyone's doing as well as can be expected under the circumstances. I'm going to begin first by sharing my principal's report for March. And then I'll share some tidbits about what we've been up to ever since. And of course, you can ask questions at any time. Staff and students celebrated Read Across America Day on March 2nd. The staff read excerpts from their favorite texts to each of their classes throughout the day. Mrs. Kane put together a slideshow and bulletin board showcasing each staff member with their favorite book. The slideshow ran the entire week in the front hall by the gymnasium, and the bulletin board display was located by the media center. The Treps Market Fair, a big success, was held on Thursday, March 5th. Students in the Treps Club set up booths and sold their products to students and parents in the evening and during the following school day during lunches. The club's advisors, Ms. Pistorius and Ms. Saporito, worked with the students for 10 weeks prior to the market fair. Mr. Alexis and I and some other volunteers did a Shark Tank beforehand with the kids to kind of give them a little bit of an evaluation on their products and their advertising. And I just have to say they were so impressive. The club is subsidized through a grant from the Watchung Youth Services Commission. So of course we greatly appreciate that. 4 of our math teachers attended another session of Conquer Mathematics early in the month. Ria Patel, a 7th grade student at Valley View, participated in the Scripps County Spelling Bee on March 7th. Students from public, private, and charter schools competed at the Somerset County Bee held at the Votech. And this was the 3rd time Ria has represented Valley View School, and she finished in the top 10. So congratulations to her. So as you are all aware, March 13th marked the beginning of our journey into distance learning. I must say, if there was any doubt of how special the Valley View community is, it has been erased by the magic I've personally witnessed from all stakeholders. I only had the pleasure of being in the school for a few months before we all were sent home. But I have to say that my relationships with the teachers have continued, and the parents and even the students, even though we've been doing remote learning. Before I begin sharing all the magic I've been seeing, I want to take a moment to thank our Board of Education. Without your support and responsiveness, we would not have been able to implement with lightning speed the ongoing updates to meet our staff and students' needs. So a big thank you to you. You guys have been amazing and very supportive with anything that we come to you with. You're helping us make it work, so I appreciate that. Staff, students, and parents have been working as a team to ensure that learning continues and that we stay connected to one another. Socially, Student Council has created a Google Classroom with weekly events and challenges for all the students to participate in. We're jumping into week 2 actually tomorrow, which is nice. Our Community Outreach Club is planning virtual family trivia nights. So we're trying to put that together, and we'll hold a couple of those just to keep people engaged and connected to one another. And we're also brainstorming different ideas for Spirit Weeks. Academically, all the teachers are interacting with their students via GoGuardian, our security monitoring system, and Google Classroom. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, GoGuardian allows teachers to see students' screens in real time to keep them on task and to offer assistance. It also allows the class to engage in a live chat. We were excited to extend this feature to devices beyond our school-issued ones. Originally, it was something that was just assigned to our school Chromebooks, but now students can log into their Google accounts on other devices, and we can help with that security measure also. The staff has been very diligent in following all safety guidelines regarding all of the programs. The fact that we also had GoGuardian in place already is just an added layer of protection and a great opportunity for teachers and students to interact throughout the lessons. Google Classroom, it's been an invaluable tool during distance learning. It's a one-stop shop for students to receive assignments, turn them in, and receive feedback from the teachers. We continue at Valley View to add features connected to Google Classroom. In the past weeks, we've added Google Meet for online chats and live instruction. We've added Gmail for communication throughout the day, and Google Calendar to assist students with organization. And I'd have to say the teachers are very relieved about the Gmail. They said it really gives students the opportunity and teachers the opportunity to thoughtfully respond and ask questions to one another. You know, we take our email for granted, but it's new for the kids. Additionally, the staff is using multiple online tools to deliver instruction and continue to engage with students. Programs such as iCivics, Loom recorded videos, Zoom conferencing, Soundtrap for music, where the kids can actually play with a full orchestra behind them as they're practicing a piece, record themselves and send it to their teacher, a whiteboard tool for math instruction, and adaptive programs such as Prodigy and No Red Ink, and the list can go on and on and on. The tools are being used for a variety of purposes during the scheduled class time and afterward. They're holding literature discussions, fireside chats, which I absolutely love, tutorials on how to use the new tools, mini lessons for new content and for reteaching content, read alouds, enrichment opportunities are being offered, and extra help, and they're all occurring on a regular basis at Valley View. I've really been impressed how quickly students are picking up on how to use the tools, a lot more quickly than I know I would. But basically what I wanted to share with anyone is that, everyone, is that Valley View has embraced the one-to-one learning tools and the distance learning environment with great success. I'm really, really excited to see what the teachers and the students come up with next. You know, I'm blown away every day. I jump in and out of their Google Classrooms, and you know, when we have our faculty meetings and we have sessions where we share out our successes, they really amaze me about how quickly they've been able to pull this together and implement it, and the feedback from the families and just the support that we're getting from home has been amazing also. So that's my report. Any questions?
Karen,
Just,
yeah. I'm sorry, Jen.
that's okay.
I was just wondering if through the museums and different areas, they've been doing programs, which George, just from the state, we heard there's no more, there aren't any field trips and this and that, but they're holding different types of programs that would be like taking kids on a field trip if you can tap into some of these programs in the Met, and I don't know, there's a whole bunch out.
You're absolutely right. There are a lot of virtual tours and different museum tours and different opportunities. Mrs. Kane, our media center specialist, has been wonderful about communicating to families opportunities that kids can explore beyond the school day. We really are trying to focus on delivering our curriculum and our instruction to the best we can to make sure that the kids are as prepared. But we definitely include the fun stuff because there are so many students that are grabbing onto the enrichment opportunities. So, you know, thank God for Mrs. Kane. She's always looking for new things to get them involved with. We're even going to continue to do Battle of the Books this year. We're going to do it virtually, but we're still going to, you know, try to investigate some more of those fun opportunities. But if anyone finds anything like that, just send it my way. I'll forward it to her and make sure she hasn't already shared it with families.
Great, thank
Mrs. Kidd, Jen Scharf. I just want to say I've been extremely impressed. It's been absolutely phenomenal. My 5th grader and my 8th grader, I wake them up at 8 and they roll over and get their Chromebooks at 8:15. But they are engaged, which is great because I'm on with my students all morning and into the early afternoon. But many voices coming out of their rooms. I hear the voices of the teachers, voices of friends, but they are actively engaged. And Mrs. Keene, with the emails from the library, I haven't even been able to keep up because they just keep coming. And as to what Mrs. O'Donnell said about the virtual tours, and it's escaping my mind right now, but I believe in my 8th grade daughter's history class that Mr. Anderson I had seen an email where he was referencing virtual historical tours of some degree, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And I think the Gmail thing is great. I actually do it with my 3rd graders and they do it. But the emails on Friday have been coming out like clockwork. And that's really when I got the opportunity to kind of sit and look at what my girls are doing. And, one of my students needed to turn something back in and the teacher emailed me. And then I believe my student then got a video from the teacher reviewing what she needed to do. So just really very pleased. Great
thank
job.
you. Thank you for the feedback. The teachers, they're amazing. They're working so hard for the kids, and we really can't ask for more. So thank you for the feedback. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for listening to me ramble on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Kidd.
Thank you.
We could unmute Ms. Dobowanski.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. First and foremost, we miss seeing not only each other, but all of our families, and especially our students, every single day. That's one of the things that we are really trying to navigate and balance, is that keeping that connection with the students. So what I'm going to do is similar to Ms. Kidd. I'm going to first go into a little update about what we did before we left, and then where we are with distance learning, what we've been doing, and how we're going to be moving forward. So first, we did celebrate Read Across America. We did it as a week-long event this year. And so we kicked off the week with Read Across America Day, in which we had various community leaders, some of who are on this call this evening, come in and read to all the classes in the different grade levels, which was very exciting. And then our 4th grade also had the extra opportunity to hear a story read by our county superintendent, Mr. Jinks, who came in at the end of the day, and they were all engaged and very excited to meet Mr. Jinks and hear his story. So that was a great way to celebrate. In addition to that, we did a lot of activities and buddy readings with our different classes. So our teachers pair up with different grade levels and they do buddy readings throughout the year. And so this week is always an exciting opportunity for them to get to share different stories and things that not only they've all been writing, but also some of the older students share some of their favorite stories with the younger students and vice versa. So that's always exciting. And then we were able to culminate the week with a longtime supported tradition with the PTO, who I'd like to thank. We were able to get Michael Rex to come into Bayberry School, who is a New York Times bestselling author and illustrator. He has over 40 children's books that he's authored and also illustrated that have been out for years. And all of our students in the various grade levels were able to have the opportunity to not only hear and see, because he demonstrated how he illustrates a story while he's writing it, and also get to ask some questions with him. In addition to that, we had a select group of students who were able to have a private Q&A with him during lunch, and they were very excited to hear a little bit more about what he does and his process, and go a little bit more in depth with that. So thank you for the PTO for providing that opportunity again this year. Our students really do enjoy it. In addition to that, Mr. Rex also stayed for probably about an hour and a half and personally autographed books that were pre-purchased for our students, and then also donated some books to raffle off for students, and then also donated a book or two for our Bayberry Library. So we are greatly appreciative of that. In addition to that, we were able, with the hard work of the coordinators for the Scholastic Book Fair with the PTO, to right before we left, we were able to get all of our students had the opportunity to shop and go through the book fair, which they were very excited about. It's always a very welcome event. And our evening event for the families, although this was at the start of some of this predicament that we're in currently, they were able to attend and shop in the evening with their child, and it was one of our best attended and sponsored events. And so thank you again to the PTO, the chair people who ran that, and also I know the two women, Miss George and Miss Morris, really worked hard and worked very closely with me. We had a lot of late communications in order to ensure that all of the students were able to get through and have an opportunity to visit the book fair and also purchase it. So to move on, first, thank you to all of the family, our students, the Board of Education, and also my staff members during these unprecedented times. It is a unique situation to the elementary school setting in order to even have the conversation about distance learning, but then to be thrust into it. My staff has been working very hard alongside myself and the admin team to, really just embrace and learn and then implement some of the new technology that we've never really worked with before at the elementary level, in an attempt to, in order to stay connected with students and also families, and also to support one another. And we've embraced it, and we are doing our best. There is always a slight learning curve, but I think that we are sharing our ideas and sharing our knowledge with one another. So with that being said, we, similar to what Ms. Kidd was saying, we are using a multitude of online resources that are available. One of our biggest shifts was into the Google Classroom. Our 3rd and 4th graders were familiar with it prior to us leaving. However, prior to spring break, we implemented it for the K2 levels, and that was new. So we had to get actually everybody in on the back end of the system and then logged in on the front end of their system so that they could get in and see their classes and make that shift into the Google Classroom. I can say that within the first 24 hours, we had all of our K2 students that had logged in, found their class, and were excited to get started. We are also using a multitude of online resources, some of which are affiliated with our curriculum, such as Think Central for our mathematics. We are doing some work with our Smarty Ants for our phonics for our K2 levels and our special ed students. And then in addition to that, we're using a multitude of online resources, one of which that our students are really loving is Storyboard. in which they get to write a story, and then they get to animate it, and then put their voice to it, and then submit it to our teachers. So that's also very exciting to see. And then I know that a lot of our band and vocal students have been recording themselves and uploading that to the teachers. It's nice to see the students are still, practicing their instruments and keeping their vocal cords in tune. And then also, I know that there's also been a lot of physical education going on and alternate ways of thinking about physical education. And Mr. Primo was sharing a few of those with me today, where they had one family where that, they decided that, their activity for the week was going to be to plant a tree. And for any of us who know it, that is pretty hard work. And so, we had the whole family was around and everybody was taking turns with it. So that was also, thinking outside of the box, which is kind of what we're doing right now. So all of that being said, as we know, distance learning is an evolving experience, especially for us at the elementary school, because our students are, a little bit more dependent upon the adults for their instruction and for their assistance and guidance through their learning. And so we are constantly evaluating and updating our approach. So with all of that being said, we are going to be increasing the amount of time the student to teacher live face-to-face contact in the upcoming weeks, and putting out different information and different ways for teachers to connect with that in the forms of more live lessons and an increase in extra help and being supportive, aside from just what we've been doing at the elementary level, is really relying on parent and teacher communication via email. And so we are going to be increasing that. And now with the new additions to Google Classroom, which are very exciting, because Google just added the ability to hold a secured Google Meet within the classroom, which was not available to us when we first started, but it also comes along with all the securities that Google provides for Google Apps for Education. So we're going to be able to begin implementing that through each classroom. And so each teacher is going to be able to do that to provide not only live instruction, but also extra assistance as needed for our students. But again, we thank you for all of your support. We miss seeing our kiddos every day. I really can't stress that enough. And my staff at Bayberry has been incredible and amazing, and sharing resources and supporting one another, and also learning as we go and sharing what they learn through our virtual faculty meetings. So are there any questions?
Can you speak to this is Jory, can you speak to the 504s?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Harvey. Yes, I am working with Ms. Fleming, our guidance counselor, to ensure that our teachers are implementing all of the modifications and accommodations in them. I have not received any communication, as Mrs. Kidd has, as far as an emergency 504 that's needed. But again, that is an ongoing situation where that, if it's needed, it will be written and implemented, and we can hold a virtual meeting similar to what Mrs. Toto and her team are doing for the child study team with IEPs.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Alexis.
Thanks, Mrs. Dobrowanski. We appreciate it. Next thing on the superintendent's remarks is the enrollment. As you can tell from the revised agenda, we have moved some things around. So we have included the enrollment reports here at the beginning. The enrollment has remained basically the same throughout the year, fluctuating between about 621 to 623 students. This doesn't reflect a student that was just enrolled, activated today, which would bring us to 622, but that will appear on the next report. You'll also notice on the agenda that we have the committee reports, and I'll turn it back to Mrs. Harvey We moved the committee reports, board liaison reports, and community engagement reports up to the front of the meeting from the back where it previously was.
For human resources, Gail, would you be able to please give us the HR committee report?
Yes, we had our meeting April 13th, and we went over the 12-month employee calendar, and needless to say, it has been revised, right, Mr. Alexis? And we've got the new calendar at this point. So all of us have that calendar. Custodians, we have, they've been full-time coming in, taking care of the facilities. The state guidance and observations and evaluations, this is ongoing because the state, the county, everybody are working very diligently on this area for the evaluations. It was asked about the extended summer year, school year. And at this point, we hope we'll have it. Extracurricular activities, we have not at this point, except student councils going. And there's a couple that are ongoing clubs that have been able to be maintained. So they're still continuing, but sports has been eliminated for spring. Let's see.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mrs. O'Donnell, the sports never got started. We didn't even have a chance to
That's
have
right.
tryouts or select teams or anything like that, unfortunately.
Yes. And that's, the other things are already covered that you can see on the sheets regarding staff for renewals and so forth. So that's our committee meeting.
Thank you.
Mhm.
For, I know Rich is in here for operations. Joe, would you be able to give the operations committee report?
Sure, no problem. We met on April 15th as a group, and the first agenda item was obviously we talked about having a safe platform for virtual meetings, which we're doing right now, and that was established. The second thing was the status of the RTU replacement project at Bayberry, which is being done over spring break, and that effectively has been completed. I assume for just obviously a little tweaks, but that is virtually done, and that was another success that we planned and projected on. The next item was the custodians. So the custodians obviously are retained and so forth, and we're trying to come up with ways to utilize them bestly. And they have gone to a lot of preventative maintenance, painting that was scheduled in advance for the next year that is being accomplished now. And by doing all that, that is a cost-effective way, and we are obviously saving money going forward. And the other next step is also doing a new process of chemical-free stripping of the floors, which has that nice shiny coat on all the floors in the schools that obviously has to be maintained and stripped and reapplied. So they're going to do that, obviously, before the summer, assuming that school is still closed. The next step, we talked about the tentative budget that we all approved that was submitted to the state. There was a few agenda questions on there that the county had, nothing major. They were addressed. Speaking of the budget, we will be having a public hearing on May 4th and presenting the final budget at that time. The next one and final is we received from our architect the long-term facility estimate for both schools. This helps in our facility planning for long-term, along with obviously a future referendum. And these are all obviously the things that are needed for both schools to keep operational going forward, i.e. the roofs, the air conditioning system, the electronics, and so forth. So those are the major items we spoke on at our committee meeting.
Thank you, Joe. Jen, can you please give the curriculum committee report?
Yes, hi. So the curriculum committee met on March 26th, and at that time, we heard the plan for the administrative team's plan for the implementation of the distance learning plan. And we're meeting again this week to discuss enhancements and changes.
Okay, and Mr. Barbella, can you please give the policy committee report?
Sure. So we met last week and we discussed several policies, a few of which are on the agenda. The first is mandatory policy, which was a carryover from last year related to earned sick leave. This is a state regulation having to accrue for sick leave for individuals typically that are part-time workers if they're not under a covered plan. We have very few, if any, individuals within the school districts that would apply to, that this would apply to because teachers are already covered as well as administration. But in any case, this is a mandatory policy. So this is one item that we talked about for inclusion in today's meeting for first read. We also discussed finalizing and I know it's not as timely anymore, but nevertheless, we had it as a first read last meeting, the playground policy. So that is a policy we're wrapping up, and a policy regarding use of physical restraint as necessary. And this was a optional policy. We already have it as existing policy, but we have optionality within the policy in terms of its application. So that was one that was discussed. And then lastly, discussion regarding, obviously, which is in the minds of everyone today, distance learning and how to best achieve that. So at the moment, we're in the research phase of anything we need to do from a policy perspective for distance learning. A lot of districts have various distance learning components within their existing policy, but it's not really related to this current COVID situation. It's more generic regarding situations where they have distance learnings in the event of, let's say, special circumstances. And the state thus far hasn't provided guidance on this, but this is another topic. We're beginning to research and make a determination if there's something that we can put together regarding that as well.
Thanks, Joe. I'll move on to the board liaison report. Since Rich isn't here, we won't, we'll just skip that one and go right back to you, Joe, for the town council liaison.
I don't have an update. I don't know, Jen, if you have an update. Otherwise, we might as well just go, once we get into the community engagement, we can hand it over to Daryl. Obviously, it's been a challenging month with everything going on for coordination there.
Do you have anything, Jen, or no?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Community engagement liaison, Gail, any report?
Not at this time.
And then Gail, for the Somerset County Educational Services Commission?
Yes, we had our virtual meeting last week, and they had a few changes made, especially with the school being closed and not being able to do virtual learning to its fullest. So they're in the process of getting evolving also with all their distant learning. And that was about it. Yes, thank you.
Okay, and then Jessica, anything from the Somerset County School Boards Association?
No meetings, virtual or otherwise. They canceled the in-person meeting that was scheduled.
Okay, great. Mallory, New Jersey School Boards?
I don't have any updates at this time.
Okay, and then community engagement from the Borough Council, Mrs. Daryl Eisenberg-Connecton. Do you have any report for us?
Members from the community, if you have something you'd like to share, please use the raise hand button and I will have our host unmute your microphone.
Yeah. Hi, I just wanted to say hello to all you. It's been quite some time since we've seen each other's faces, so this is, although a difficult circumstance, rewarding to see everyone here. So just a few updates from the Borough Council. Council members have been manning a Watchung helpline. So we urge any resident in need of assistance, really of any kind, but especially our vulnerable communities that aren't leaving their homes, any assistance you need in grocery shopping, getting supplies, truly anything. Our helpline number is 908-745-2111. We are also asking members of the community who are not in the vulnerable population if they are looking to volunteer in activities such as buying the groceries for those who can't leave their homes. We have a volunteer sign-up form on the borough website, watchungnj.gov, and there you can volunteer to help some of our neighbors who are in need. We're also continually accepting any PPE donations or food donations, non-perishable foods for those that may become or are currently food insecure. Our borough is doing a food drive to provide for them. If you want to make a donation of either non-perishable foods or PPE, such as masks, gloves, etc., just call the helpline 908-745-2111, just so we can keep a log of the donations, and then you'll be asked to deliver them to the police department. We're also in coordination right now with our mayor of joining our neighbors in Warren this Thursday. They're doing a Make Some Noise event at 7 p.m., just like the residents of New York City have been doing every night at 7 to cheer and celebrate our first responders and our essential workers. So we're in the final stages of that, and so stay tuned for an announcement that we'll be joining Warren in their Make Some Noise efforts this Thursday at 7. And again, one more time, I'll be a broken record. The helpline number is 908-745-2111. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. For WEF, is there any report from WEF from Gina, or I think sometimes Angela is usually there?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Yeah, I don't see any either. Okay. CPAG, Kelly Newsome, any report? And then PTO, Sonia Woods. Okay, I'm just going to go into the comments from the public on agenda items. We welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during the meeting when the public is invited to speak. The first opportunity to comment on agenda items only is now. The second opportunity for public comment is towards the end of the meeting. Total time allotted for public comment is 30 minutes. Before you make your comment, please state your name and address. In the event it appears the public comment portion of the meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by a participant to 3-minute duration. Our public forums are not structured as a question and answer session, but rather are offered as opportunities to share input with the board. In instances where the board feels a response is needed, the presiding officer or superintendent will address the comment. New Jersey statutes do not permit the board to discuss personnel or hiring in public session. Names of students should not be used. Mr. Pepe, will you please read the statement due to recording this meeting?
Yes, members of the public should consider their comments in light of legal rights of those affected and identified in their comments, and be aware that they are personally legally responsible with potential liability for comments that they make to the board. The board shall not not be held liable for comments made by members of the public. At this time, if anyone would like to come to the mic, so to say, just click the raise hand button if you're having trouble finding it. When you scroll to the bottom of your page, you'll see a participants button. You can click on that, find yourself. There's other ways to see it too, but that's one place at the bottom of the participants list is a raise hand button. As we see them, we will unmute the microphone and allow you to speak. When you're finished, we will mute and go to the next person. So far, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
I don't know if you guys heard me. We'll move on to action items. Jessica, can you please move administrative items?
Sure. I move approval of minutes of previous meeting, first one, and then the approval of minutes of the previous meeting, second one, which was March 19th, the first being March 16th. A3, Superintendent HIB reports, A4, a second Superintendent HIB report, and A5, acceptance of school security drill report.
And we have a second
Second, Gail.
discussion. Okay, no discussion, so roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft, your microphone is muted. I'm asking Manny to unmute that. We need that unmuted for you to vote. I will come back to Mr. Kraft for his vote. Manny, if you hear me, please make sure his microphone gets unmuted. And Mr. Mattiasi? Mr. Mattiasi also needs his microphone unmuted. Okay, I will come back. Mrs. Morales?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf?
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey?
Yes.
And we have Mr. Mattiasi.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kraft? Mr. Kraft is still muted. Okay, I think we have enough votes for the motion to carry, so I think we can move on.
Okay. For personnel, Gail, can you please move personnel items?
I move approval of personnel. B1, rescind medical leave of absence. B2, approval of 12-month employee calendar and office summer hours. And B3, approval of regular salary payment of custodians for March 23rd and 24th.
And we have a second
Second.
discussion. Seeing no discussion, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barbella?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia?
Yes.
Mr. Mattiasi?
Yes.
Mrs. Morales?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf?
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
and Mr. Kraft. If you can hear, you can also vote by raising your hand, but I still see that you're unmuted, or that you are muted. Again, we do have enough votes for the motion to carry.
Okay, I guess let's just move on. For operations, Mr. Mediasi, can you please move operations?
Sure. Move C1, approval of payment of bills. C2, approval of transfer of funds 2019 to 2020. C3, acceptance of financial report. C4, revised acceptance of Watchung Educational Foundation grant. C5, donation of personal protective equipment.
Can we have a second?
Second, this is Jen.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia?
Yes, with gratitude for the WEF grant.
Mr. Mediasi?
Yes.
Mrs. Morales?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf?
Yes.
And Mrs. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion's carry.
For policy, Mr. Barbella, can you please move the policy items?
Surely. Move E1, approval of policy for first reading. Use of physical restraint and seclusion techniques revised, and earned sick leave policy.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Me, Jessica.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any discussion? No discussion. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barbella?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia?
Yes.
Mr. Mediasi?
Yes.
Mrs. Morales?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf?
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey?
I vote yes on 1642 and no on 5561.
Okay, the motion's passed.
Under board business, revised board goals for the superintendent's evaluation process. Sorry, we needed, or we need to establish some goals for our CSA evaluation, the 11 goals as we discussed on Thursday. We won't be able to use those for this. So if you don't mind, George, I know you sent an email earlier, but can you please just go over some of your suggestions for it?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and I just want to point out a couple of things because I think this can be confusing on a few different levels, certainly for the public. One clarification about the agenda item. It's listed as revised board goals for the superintendent evaluation process. It should have been listed on the agenda as revised goals for superintendent evaluation process. The difference being, because technically these are not board goals, they're goals for the evaluation process for this current year, 2019, 2020 only. Next year, we'll have a different situation. The board goals for 2020-21 school year next year will be in place this summer, and we will be aligning my evaluation goals with those board goals. That process will begin at the board retreat in June. Last year's board retreat was canceled, unfortunately, so board goals were not developed for the 2019-20 school year in September. The board did, however, adopt district goals, which were based on student performance data, the ones that Mrs. Harvey just referenced, the 11 goals. We are removing them from the evaluation process because, as we discussed at the special meeting on Thursday, evaluations based on student performance data cannot be completed as per the governor's executive order and the Department of Education guidance. In their place, we're adding 3 goals that can be used for the superintendent evaluation. These goals are to be mutually agreed upon. At the outset, let me say, we'll decide on the goals only and not necessarily to what extent they have or have not been accomplished. That's the personnel part of the process, which is addressed in executive session. Board members have provided input and suggestions for the goals, and I've shared 3 proposed goals, which I'll outline in a moment. The board then has the opportunity to provide further input, and our intent is to arrive at a mutual agreement. Let me also say that I realize there's currently an understandable focus on distance learning, and it has been suggested that there should be a separate distance learning goal. But I want to reiterate that the goals should cover the time period between when I began in late October and when I submit in early to mid-May the evidence and artifacts that will document progress toward the goals. Distance learning did not arise until March, and evidence and artifacts regarding distance learning and communication practices during this extraordinary time can be in the context of the assessment of the proposed goals. And given that it's, I'm in a position where I'm a first-year superintendent who entered the district in late October during a challenging time in the district's history, and now find myself leading the district through an unprecedented set of circumstances, I would prefer not to have such a standalone goal of that kind of nature and that kind of expectation, especially given that it's now late April and we're trying to rectify this evaluation process retroactively for circumstances outside our control. In the spirit of fairness and reasonable expectations for the process, I just respectfully request the board consider the totality of these circumstances. The proposed goals are as follows, and based on more input from board members, I added to them from what I had submitted earlier today. So the first one being establish myself as the educational leader of the community by gaining a deeper understanding of the challenges facing the district, evaluating the district's strengths and weaknesses, and developing relationships with key stakeholders, all in an effort to make decisions in the best interests of the students and the school community. This goal can be measured by the progress made toward these objectives identified here in the goal. The second one would be prepare for, and this one actually came from in consultation with the executive county superintendent, prepare for and lead the district through the CUSAC monitoring process. This goal can be measured by the steps taken to identify and organize artifacts and evidence of compliance, respond to county inquiries, and remediate deficiencies in preparation for the monitoring visit, which was supposed to happen on March 24th, but has now been suspended indefinitely, and there are plans to be continuing this in a remote, through a remote process. And I've been in contact with the executive county superintendent about that, and his office has also been in contact with our principals / curriculum directors for one portion of the process. And then last, establish and implement practices for communicating with the school community in an effort to enhance communication with key stakeholders and in retrospect during an unforeseen health-related crisis. This goal can be measured by the frequency, quality, and context of the communications throughout the year. So those are the 3 I propose. We'll to questions, of course, and suggestions.
I think, I don't, before we do that too, I think Gail sent, I don't think she sent it to everybody, but she did have some suggestions too. I don't know if Gail wants to jump in and mention some of hers that she suggested.
So when Gwen Thornton gave us our little, virtual learning that took place, she did mention about 3 goals would be plenty. I tend to agree possibly with 3 goals at this point. I think that would be probably suitable for at this point. Also, I had put down for virtual learning, distance learning, but I did talk to Gwen, and Gwen did say that that should be a actual 2020, 2021 goal for next year. So I think that's definitely one that we need to put in for next year. But this year, I agree that it might not be, it's just too early to have that type of goal right at this point. Otherwise, I had also stated that an educational leader of the school, the staff, the community, and also working with CUSAC, which is huge, just huge. I definitely think that should be a goal. Definitely put in for this year. Anything else, Dory? Did I?
I think you put development of instructional programs.
Oh, right. There were, just of what type of instruction that there was for, I have to see what I wrote that. Okay. Well, instructional for, trying to meet some of the goals, 11 goals that we had down. But I think at this point, as we know, our goals for the 11 goals that we had can't be implemented at this point.
I think that can also be included, in the sense that the first goal is about identifying and evaluating the district's strengths and weaknesses. And that goal can kind of encompass, I think, Gail, what you were thinking, and I do think it's a fair one to talk about for a goal for next year.
Thank you.
When are those goals for next year done, if I can ask as a newbie?
June. The goals are always done in June.
Okay.
Are there any other suggestions for goals?
Hey guys, it's Adam. My thoughts are, I really like that first one, George. I think it's well thought out. I like how we can measure it. I think number 3 really goes to enhancing number 1 or really accomplishing number 1. And then a couple thoughts are, I'd like to see just more formal process or transparency around accomplishing what we set out to achieve within the district. So more project plans, milestones, really any formal way of getting to not just your goals, but the goals of the district to bring us back to excellence. Pie in the sky goals are tough because pie in the sky goals are good, but looking for an end of the year goal without any short-term goals or milestones or any way to really measure it and see how we're doing and adjust if necessary doesn't really lend itself to continued success. So I'd like to see something like that. I know it's just for the short term for here, but I think now more than ever, being able to really plot out the project plan is important. Really anything around extracurriculars, that might be more for next year at this point. I'd love to see more engagement for the kids in anything other than worksheets and just normal education. I think they're all just starving for interaction with their peers, with their teachers. So yeah, those are a couple of my thoughts.
That's fair, and I think that actually could be a good discussion. I guess the way I see it, like in June, especially if we're going to talk about extracurricular and athletics and putting together a plan for expanding that or coming up with creative ways to create more engagement, more opportunities for the students, whether that's through athletics or through clubs and activities. I'm certainly open to that.
Great. Thank you.
George, this is Jen. From what I understand, CUSAC is a tremendous amount of work. A lot goes into it. I think that, number 1, I do have to say, I do feel that number 1 and number 3 are kind of linked together. And if the process of setting goals starts again in June, perhaps something could be added to this that then builds into with the distance learning plan, because I think we all, watching the news, it's not, I don't think we're done with it
Sure.
in June. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that is going to keep evolving.
No,
So just
it's
something,
definitely-
I'm not saying the whole thing, just like just a little thing to it.
Yeah, that's what I tried to do with the third one, and I realized they are related to some extent. I also realized that, this is not necessarily something we're talking about for 3 months, that there's going to have to be a plan that we're going to have to talk about in terms of a goal for perhaps like a transition back, and have that discussion too about what it looks like next year, what kinds of precautions. We've already started discussing that at the county level. But I guess I look at what I tried to do with that third one was add a specific reference to the whole challenge here with the COVID-19 health crisis, and how the communication has played a role in that context, but also how communication has played a role not just with the parents but with staff, with people in the community, the borough, and look at it from a range of experiences from October through May, and certainly the communication within the last 2 months would play a role in that goal, and the same with the first goal too. I mean, we can't look outside the context. It's not like I'm saying I want to do this goal and only do it up to March 13th, but I would like to have a goal that encompasses the entire 8 months or 7 months, whatever it might be. Does that make sense?
I mean, just the way I think, I certainly look at you establishing your role as an educational leader with all of the great communication you've had with the community from October through this time. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm kind of looking at it as all as one, but that's fine.
I might jump in with a couple of points. I think, to just put this into context, to be having to make and get consensus on board goals on April 20th, when we begin the evaluation conference and pre-conference in late May or early June, is very unusual. So this is not a typical exercise in goal setting, and therefore I feel like the goals really can't adhere to that. Adam, you referenced specificity and things like action plans, and those, in board trainings, they do walk you through a goal setting exercises in small groups and things where they have an acronym called SMART, which is specific, measurable, actionable, time sensitive, and like achievable. What's another word for realistic? So, there's a whole process for goal setting, and Joe, you've been through it many times. We skipped it last year. We had a retreat scheduled for June, and it was canceled, and those goals did not carry over. Then this next June, we'll be able to set really authentic goals that have those levels of specificity and action plans. But we're caught in this awkward, 6-week period, where I think the really most important point is that whatever we do now, and by the way, the reason we're even adding these is because there's no more in-class benchmark testing. There's no more standardized testings being administered by order of the state. So we're left, essentially without superintendent goals. So given that it's an awkward time, and there's a very short time between now and then, I'm definitely against establishing any new goals that essentially ready, set, go. Now you've got 6 weeks to complete new concepts and new ideas. So the only way to get around that is by almost looking retroactively to what are some general things that we all agree on that we needed in this district, which is the establishment of an educational leader. To me, that sets the tone for the educational programming and the delivery of instruction. And then CUSAC, we had always known was going to be an issue for us, and I think there's been a lot of progress made. These are all things that have been ongoing since late October. And then the practices for communication, I just jotted down that you mentioned some specificity on that with frequency, quality, and context, and we can go back and assess any of changes in the communication, and see if those are measurable against an overall goal of enhanced and increased communication. So for me, these work because honestly, trying to do a lot more than this just doesn't work given our timing. And like I said, there's a prescribed timeline for when boards set these goals, and we're not in that time frame.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I just like to add a few things to that. So George, thanks for putting forth the goals. And I realize the somewhat awkward situation we're in terms of establishing goals with, in retrospect, and a month and a half left in the school year. My only two cents is that I think it's going to be critical, especially in June, for preparation of next year's goals, obviously, because we need to hope for the best but plan for the worst. And I would recommend that a lot of thought be placed and starting now in terms of preparation of God forbid an extended period of time where all we may have is distance learning, right? And what is that going to entail, and what is that going to mean for the district? And thinking out of the box a little bit in terms of that goal setting, where we could be in situations where we're both in and out of school periodically, and how do we maintain that continuity for the children, and obviously the considerations on technology and some of the items mentioned about having even this year in very short notice, and I think we're all very appreciative of that. Having the teachers present with the children in terms of their visibility and preparation of lesson plans and everything else, as best as can be described in terms of a virtual setting of learning. So, I would just say and I realize that's not these goals, but they build upon those goals coming in June, in terms of preparation of what the school needs to do to be prepared in the event that we're still in this situation. So that's my only 2 cents regarding preparation upcoming in June.
That's fair and very helpful. Thanks, Joe.
This is Joe. I have a comment. So I looked at George's goals and so forth, and I'm fine with them because if you look at this from a totality, the 2019-2020 year has been extremely challenging. And these goals should have been established, unfortunately, for 2019. So, and George came in, obviously, in the end of October. So it's unfair to establish separate goals when it should have been done last year. Now, my fellow board members all have very valid goals, and that should be all established in June for the next coming year. But since I've gone through this several years, you should be doing this on basically what should have been established last year, and that's how I feel.
George, this is Gail.
Yes, Gail.
Would you send us all the board members under each of the goals here? For example, what other areas that you'll be addressing for established roles, educational leader of the community, the challenging aspect that you have been going through, understanding. Just would you list some of the things that we're going to be evaluating you for each of these areas?
Yeah, what I can do is, because I did add to these after I sent the email earlier, I'll copy and paste what I read here and send it in an
Okay,
email.
that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We did get an email from Rich, even though he wasn't able to come tonight due to a really serious personal situation. But he did request for his email to the board to be read. He wanted it to be read to the public. And I told him I didn't mind doing that. So this is what he sent to us. Ladies and gentlemen, Unfortunately, I will not be able to participate in Monday night's board meeting. I do, however, want to give my input with respect to goals for our new superintendent this year. Number one, create and lead implementation of a comprehensive COVID-19 pandemic response plan. We should be prepared not only for the possibility that schools may be closed for an extended period of time, but also for what happens when they eventually reopen. Elements of the plan should include, at a minimum, continuous distance learning improvement with respect to technology, content, delivery, and measurement of progress. Policies, procedures, and protocols for a return to schools, for example, masks, spacing in classrooms, limitations on visitors, including volunteers and contractors, oversight of third-party services being provided to the district in person, group gatherings/assembly, including lunchroom protocol, sports and extracurricular activities. There are more, of course. The above objective will require the close engagement of and cooperation with every committee of the board and the flexibility and vision to bring new solutions to a situation no one has experienced before and which is in large part not contemplated by our current policies and practices. Two, enhance collaboration and engagement with all stakeholders, including teachers, parents, the community at large, the town council, and other community groups, county and state government, and our own Board of Education to ensure the best resources are identified, utilized, and brought to bear to return our district to excellence at the levels it has seen in the past. Three, create a culture of honest assessment and bring a sense of urgency and action to improve the performance of a district that is not currently living up to its potential for excellence. The last 2 points are the platform I ran on when I was elected to the board 18 months ago. It is clearly what the community wants and needs for its schools. I am hopeful that the new administration we have put in place will realize that vision for the borough of Watchung. Thank you all for considering my suggestions. Rich. I don't think we've heard from Mallory, or I think it's just Mallory. Is that correct? Everybody else has it. Mallory, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add.
No, I concur with everyone's feedback, and my thought was, but Gail had confirmed that this is more of a 2020-2021 goal, is around the distant learning and how do we apply best practices and make this the best possible way for the children to learn and stay engaged. So I guess that's more for this coming year.
I've already spoken, but I have a comment, actually just off of what Mallory and Gail were talking about. I do think there is room in mostly the first goal that George identified and articulated as, certainly if the overarching goal is establishment of an educational leader, distance learning would come under that purview. Okay, so that's going to be an area, and as Joe Mattiasi certainly knows, because he's done these evaluations for several years, and as we did last year, there are areas and content to be filled in under each goal section. And he may use that to say, here's an example of how I showed educational leadership by improving the distance learning in such a way. Or we may say, this is how he did or didn't by doing X, Y, and Z. Those are all permissible and valuable to add to overall, I don't want to say generic goals, but that's kind of what you're doing. You're establishing something that you populate in this written document that's a state requirement with examples, okay? And that's just as in terms of the distance learning. So I wouldn't want, and I know Gail, you didn't mean this, and Mallory, you either, that we would never talk about distance learning until June, the school's over. I think that has to be part of what we are evaluating, because it's part of now the school year. In
Yes,
terms of
I agree.
the reading of Rich Bucarelli's letter, I think that a comprehensive pandemic response would be a wonderful thing for all districts to contemplate and put together. I certainly don't think it can or should be stipulated for something to be done within 6 weeks that we can then evaluate. I also think it would be a great 2020-21 goal. So we could have that in June and establish it, and then you'd have the whole year, because as many of the fellow board members have said, we may be experiencing this on and off throughout next school year as well. It could impact us in the fall, and there could be learning loss that we then have to make up for. And so all of these things, I just think a pandemic response can't be a board goal right now for analysis and evaluation in June. So, I would just put that one for next year. And as far as, the other two that were read, I hesitate to dig too much into it, but I have to say, expand and enhance communication and collaboration with all stakeholders is great. That is essentially what George's goal number 3 is, or it jives perfectly with what he had stated. I just think we have to be very careful with both adding specificity that is sort of like a leading premise, and you certainly cannot be putting evaluative language like kind of that denigrates the district by saying it's not currently reaching its potential. There's no data, there are no studies that have said it's operating at X capacity. We have to be very careful as a board in doing that. I think it really skirts some ethical boundaries and perhaps even crosses. Same with the level of specificity in the pandemic response goal, and a lot of specifics were listed, and really the development of a plan and a response to a pandemic or any other issue is the responsibility of the administration. You then evaluate them on. You don't dictate through goals, I think, if that makes sense. So, but main comment is that I want to be clear on my own opinion on distance learning. I think it has to be evaluated, and it fits neatly into at least 2 of the goal categories that George has established. The educational leader and the practices for communication.
I just wanted to, when I read George's suggestions, I really felt like the first and second were one goal, and after talking to New Jersey school boards, the first one was definitely something that they recommend, especially for new superintendents. Establish and implement practices for communicating. I think the way I understood it, that was for whatever evidence George is going to provide to state whether or not he reached that goal. So I just felt that was one goal to begin with. I don't mind the CUSAC monitoring goal. Personally, I feel like the district has put a lot of effort already with all the committees and the amount of work that they put into gaining, and gathering all the evidence for CUSAC. So I thought that was something, that he's definitely and the school district has already worked on, in which was reasonable for him to provide evidence, along with the first one that he suggested. I did feel that even though, I'm listening to what George is stating about the distance learning and what other board members are saying as well, that they feel that it's more of a 2021 goal. I do have to say that, there's only 10 months of a school year. and 4 of those months are dealing with distance learning. And it is a little concerning for me that we're not necessarily putting something on the table at this point for 4 months of a school year that is mainly dealing with distance learning. And I did talk to Gwen as well. And my understanding from our conversation was that was something that, we should highly consider for the last 4 months of school. I believe the district has already put a lot of effort into actually creating a distance learning plan, which had to be sent to the county superintendent. So that is all evidence that could be used to support some type of distance learning goal for the last 4 months. And, it's definitely, being implemented and changed. So I don't think necessarily that, what Rich put in his goal has to be as specific, but I don't suggest that we take, distance learning as a goal off the table completely, but that's just, my opinion. Obviously, it's what the majority of the board wants. Again, I don't see any problem with, establishing the role as an educational leader and the community and the CUSAC. But to not have anything at this point about distance learning, and that's 4 months of our school year, is just a little concerning to me.
Hey, Dory, it's Mallory. I just want to clarify one thing then. I was only going based off of what I thought Gwen had said about that distant learning goal, but I am very much in favor of having that as part of the goals.
Dory, I think you make a good point about how much time of the year is spending on the distance learning. Plus, it's half of George's tenure with us.
Does anybody have any other comments? Or at this point, after talking with Gwen as well, we have to come to a consensus this evening. So since it's a virtual, meeting, what I suggested to her and she highly recommended is that we do, a roll call to find out so that we can make sure that we have a consensus on goals. So if we want to go through each goal individually, that's fine. It seems like everybody seems good with establishing the role of the educational leader and then potentially preparing for the CUSAC monitoring process. And then I guess we would, if some board members are interested, we can put up the, the distance learning, the implementation, and improvement of our distance learning plan. Does that sound good? Or does anybody want us to vote on another goal that I haven't mentioned?
I'll just reiterate my concern that I think that the distance learning is covered in the first goal and to a large extent in the third goal. So I would like you to consider all 3 of them.
May I pose a question to the board? Those who feel, which I hear and I also share, I don't mean to say that I think the distance learning is of crucial importance and it's the only game in town right now. So it's definitely, I'm not invalidating that as a goal at all. Do we not feel that it rolls up just as if we hadn't been under state orders to have distance learning, we would be evaluating the same 4-month period with similar criteria just for the in-classroom? Do we not feel that we're able to speak frankly and evaluate distance learning as a part of the overall role of establishment of educational leader of the district? And do
Um,
we also not feel that communication practices were an area of focus for the district, and we want to have a way to have some discussion and evaluation of those? I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand people's concerns with being able to evaluate and assess distance learning under a broader category that also would encompass all the other things that we need to be evaluating.
well, the establish the educational leader in our community, I understood that as George just having to provide us with information as to how he's established himself with the teachers, parents, the community, the board, the town council, what organizations he's become a part of. But in there, I didn't just group in distance learning. I mean, right now, distance learning is like I said, 4 months of our school year. And I feel that, this is something that not only us, but every school district is talking about, for us to not have it put out separately and just kind of lumped into, that's how he's establishing himself as the educational leader of our community. Just seems as if we're not giving it, George already has done a lot of the work on this. So, I'm not too sure why there's such a major concern as to, I think it's a reasonable goal.
I guess that, I certainly didn't state it as a major concern, Dory, but I am hearing that a lot of what we do as a board is on the recommendation of the superintendent, and he's recommending the 3 categories pretty strongly. And, I personally defer to that. I feel that whatever evaluation and assessment I may have to make can fit into the 3 categories.
Okay, well, let's just vote on it then. Is there anyone other than those that anybody wants to have in it? And we'll just go with the majority, whatever the majority is, and we'll move on. Does that sound good to everybody?
Are we voting or there's no resolution, so we're just talking about our consensus?
Right, but we have to come to a consensus. Yeah. And it was stated to me that in order for us to do that, we need to hear from every board member about the goals. So since it's a virtual meeting, it makes sense for us to do something like a roll call so that we understand if the majority of the board agrees to a specific goal.
Right. So are we going to say roll call for option A, which would be the goals as presented?
I was just going to go through the ones that George recommended and then also add on the one for distance learning.
And swapping out the third?
That would be 4. No, I mean, George, George is requesting for us to keep his first and third one separated, even though, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I feel that it's one and the same, but, we can vote on them separately. That's fine. And then just adding the one on there about distance learning to create, I'll just go with Rich's language here, to create and lead the implementation of a comprehensive, and I would just say distance learning plan.
So Dory, this is Gail. I just wanted to make a mention, it's not 4 months. We're talking about 1 month or 2 months, because this evaluation is taking place before, by the end of June. This whole evaluation will be 2 months into distant learning. And I don't mind us being able to evaluate a certain portion of it, but it would have to be such a mere small amount, because this is new. This is, I understand that we would like to make comments about it, but under the circumstances, putting a fourth goal in at this point, we could put information into these areas that are already listed for goals. I just think that we've got 1 month under our belt. We're going into our second month, and we're doing our evaluation of George.
The evaluation isn't due until July 1st.
Oh,
Yeah, but you fill out the, we fill out
we
the,
fill everything
we fill
out.
it out so much more in advance of that.
I've done
That's,
this 100 times. Yeah.
So this
I
is
think the
Joe.
pre-conference is in May.
This is Joe. I'll reiterate what I said before about how the goals were supposed to be established for last year. But I am also cognizant, obviously, of the distant learning. And the distant learning is a portion of this, but not 4 months. So I'm fine with the third goal that George has established if you put the implementation of distant learning.
Yeah.
But it cannot be solely based on a comprehensive, because comprehensive takes time to put it together. And and this is, as another principal from the Watchung Hills, the superintendent said, we're building this as we're flying the plane. So it cannot be comprehensive. That's just my say.
So is that what the board wants to go with, is just to vote on the 3 goals that George submitted, with the idea that we're adding some part of distance learning into the last goal?
I agree with what Joe said.
Okay, so I guess I'll say all in favor say aye, and all in favor say aye to that?
Dory, why don't you just do a roll call each person, and you know.
Okay. No, I mean, like, just so that I know, like, that's what I'm proposing to everybody right now. That that's what we're going to pretty much vote on, is what was just stated. Is anybody opposed to that?
So, just so I'm clear, so just adding a portion to be specific about the implementation of the distance learning. Yeah, I think that, okay. I'm good with that.
To which goal? To goal number 1?
I think Joe was talking about 3.
Okay, in the communication.
I think it's, I'm not sure if it fits better in 1, but okay.
Do you have a preference?
We can figure it out. I'm not sure how it fits within 3 unless you talk specifically about the communication.
Yeah, I would agree. 1.
That's what I meant, that the larger
Or maybe
context,
both.
that this is part of it.
The way I see
Right.
it, and it's just the way I see that, is for number 3 is implementation, practice of communicating with the school community. Well, distant learning is the school community, as we're saying right now. It's getting the teachers, the students, and not to mention the parents engaged, all 3 facets, and that's the community. So for me, that's how I put it in as number 3, and that's your implementation, that you're ready and that the staff has done that.
So like, Joe, so adding like, so implement practices for communicating and engaging the school community?
For distant learning, and because you did implement a whole plan on distant learning. I mean, there is some credit to be taken on this.
Yeah.
We're doing on this, and obviously all my fellow board members are very articulate in saying we have to improve on it going forward. But it's, to me, unfair that everyone's going to vote potentially and rate you on something that's comprehensive when we don't have a comprehensive plan. We're just improving on it each week at this stage.
Okay.
Well, and so it's not only the activities that we're doing now in terms of distance learning, but also, George, as you mentioned, the endless communication that we've had on distance learning and migrating to where we are now that you've had with the community. So I think you can call that out as well, right? One is the activity that's being performed by everyone, and the other is the communications you've done regarding that transition. So that's, another component of the distance learning, context that you can give as part of that goal.
Okay. How about if I say something along the lines of, let me just type this out. About establish and implement practices for communicating with the school community in an effort to enhance communication with key stakeholders throughout the year and in connection with the implementation of the distance learning plan.
You guys like that?
I'm fine with that because in an evaluation, Jessica is absolutely right. There are subcategories that people could write in and say, how are we doing things? So as long as I'm fine with you mentioning the implementation of the distant learning, and then our goals in June when we come up
Yeah.
with next year's is the comprehensive part,
Right.
but that's fine.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. And obviously we're not, you know, to be fair, right? We're not waiting until June to start the plan, right? Like this has to be a work in progress, even though it's not part of these goals. For now, this is a work in progress as we build upon what was done this year so that we have a running start.
Okay, so with those, unless anybody has anything else to say, with those 3 goals and the addition that George just put on to, I believe, that last goal, can we do, I guess, a roll call? So, Mr. Pepe, can you please go around and ask who's voting yes or no on that, on those three goals?
Sure, so we're taking a poll on them as a package now. The 3 goals,
Yes.
the 3rd one being amended. Okay.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's in agreement with the 3 with the addition that George put on.
Okay.
So we'll just vote on them as a package.
Good, we're polling. Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. Mediasi,
Yes.
Mrs. Morales,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey.
Yes. Okay, and then we have comments from the public.
Before we go away from that, can I ask you something? There were dates to everything that George needs to submit to us by a certain time, and then we need to be able to do the assessment or evaluation of George and send it to the ASBA. Tell me, can you give us a timeline to send that so that we know the timeline that we're going to be using, that all this needs to be completed so that we stay on time?
Yes, I will give you guys a timeline, but since George has just received his goals, Jen and I have to meet with George and talk with him just to find out and have a discussion as to what the timeline will be. He does need time to do his self-evaluation and to upload any evidence to indicate what goals, to help establish what goals he's actually accomplished. And then after he does that, then it will get released to the board members for review. So I'll let you guys know when that'll take place. But then after all the board members finish the evaluation, then we have to prepare a summative report. And then in the after that, there's a consensus on the summative report from the board that then is given to George, and then we discuss it in an executive session prior to the July 1st date, because July 1st is our deadline. So we have to, in a nutshell, we have to discuss things. Jen and I have to talk to George to find out what timeline he recommends as well, since he has to do a majority of the work on the evaluation. I wish I could give you exact dates now, Gail, but
That's okay.
I'm not going to be able to have that, especially since he just got the goals right now. Okay.
Okay. I want those QSAC points. I'm kidding. All right.
Okay. So I can move on to comments.
Okay.
All right. So
ready for public comments again? Use the raise hand. I see we have 2 people waiting to speak. We'll call you one at a time. As I said, once we see your hand raised, we'll unmute your mic one at a time. When you're finished, let us know so we can mute and go to the next person. Our first person will be Tynesha Sims.
Hello, Tynesha Sims, 124 Edgemont. I have a daughter that's third grader in Bayberry, and I have a daughter that's fifth grader in Valley View. And the points that I wanted to raise today was regarding the distant learning. There's a grave difference between Bayberry, third grader, distant learning, and my fifth grader at Valley View. As I heard Ms. Kidd speak about all of the programs and everything that she has going on in Valley View, and I must say they are working. My daughter that's in fifth grade is in constant interaction with her teachers face to face, whether it's through Zoom or she's chatting through Guardian. I think it's working. She's engaged from 8:15 on to 12:45. My third grader, however, I don't see that much interaction. I even reached out to Ms. Freitas and her teacher, and she's also, assured me that that's in the works and in the plans, as Ms. D has mentioned. And this week, they did implement some office hours, but I just would hope, and I'm hopeful that going forward, we will see some more interaction with the teachers, because I know that my third grader is missing that. I am working a lot more now than I was when I was going into the office, because my job is essential and my manufacturing sites are producing some hand sanitizers and a lot of things during this pandemic, that I am on calls from 6 a.m. to probably 8 p.m. every day. So the overwhelming sense of my having to be there and help my third grader throughout the day and also juggle my work schedule is kind of overwhelming. So I am looking forward to more interaction throughout this distant learning time, specifically for my third grader. The other point that I wanted to bring up was the attendance for Bayberry. Again, Valley View is on their own schedule. My daughter is accountable for her attendance via Google Classroom, but I'm accountable for my Bayberry students' attendance. Now, I'm not expecting this for the kindergartners, but for the third and fourth graders, I was hoping that at some point they will at least either get something in Google Classroom where they're clicking a button and saying I'm here and available, because I can't tell you how many times the office, Camille, has called me and said, Ms. Sims, can you please fill out the attendance forms? But I'm on calls all morning, and my husband is also out of the home and working. So it's kind of overwhelming when you have so many things that we have to do as parents, from working and balancing out the kids at home. And I just want to express how, from my perspective, how overwhelming it is. And if we can try and figure out other ways, especially, like I said, third and fourth graders, I feel like they should be accountable at to some point or to some level with attendance per se, or perhaps, the homeroom teachers can have just 15 minutes in the morning, Zoom with their classrooms, and they can take attendance there. I don't know. These are just my personal views. And my last thing is that a couple of the teachers reach out to me via email more so now than before. And a lot of the stuff, I feel like if they were just to speak directly or chat or interact with my third grader directly, then it will alleviate me interjecting. Because if I was in the school during school time, when they're in school, they don't call me to tell me that, my daughter missed assignment or something like that. So I'm like, are you speaking to her or chatting with her through Google Classroom? Like, this is something that we need to probably, enhance, or something that it's just simple, just chat with the students through Google Classroom. So I'm not seeing that. My daughter's fine. She's not struggling, but at the same time, I know she misses that, interaction and that dynamic between her and her teachers. So those are my points that I wanted to raise in today's meeting.
Thank you.
No problem.
You're unmuted. I'm ready. Hi, Kim D. Donato, 60 Friar Lane. How's everyone doing? Can they hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
We
cool.
can hear you.
All right, great. First, I want to say thank you. I've got an 8th grader, Valley View. You guys are doing an awesome job. You know, she's up, she's engaged, you know, social studies, science, STEM, English. You're doing it. It's amazing what has happened. I'm just amazed. So kudos. And to the board getting it all out there, and Mr. Alexis and everyone. So we're just thrilled and sad about the situation, but so happy to be in such a great town that's doing it right. With that being said, Danielle and the other 70 8th graders were getting ready for all these great celebrations that were to come up. And we're thinking about, what are we going to do now? You know, I know nothing's been canceled for June, but the moms, a couple of the 8th grade moms that we've had committees and we've raised some money, we've already started to think about, you know, what can we do or what can we plan to do going forward? And just, I guess I'll say, planting the seed of how can we get these kids a celebration, whether it's, you know, we know probably June won't happen, not, you know, it doesn't look that way, but maybe the summer, or has the board talked about anything about this? Just curious on what your thoughts are on that.
George, I don't know if you want to address that, any type of 8th grade celebration, if that's something that you've discussed.
Well, and that's what I mentioned initially, that we've started to talk about ideas. I can't say we've solved the problem. I also mentioned that we are starting the discussion at the county level because most of the districts have high schools and they're dealing with the high school graduation ceremonies. So we're going to continue to look at ideas, brainstorm, see if we can come up with some creative ideas. But we'll be advising the board on that, and then offering our ideas and our suggestions, and then we'll be reporting to the community when we have a better idea of what we can do. We certainly don't want the kids to miss those celebrations. We certainly don't want to have to not be able to celebrate the promotions and having the kids go off to the high school level.
Yeah, with the
So
award
we'll keep you
ceremony and
informed.
all that fun stuff. We and we'll get in touch with you guys on some stuff that we're trying to just do locally at the town level, some stuff to do with, you know, celebrate the kids, whether it be through maybe some signs, some the kids, you know, with their Instagram, and just celebrating, you know, on an 8th grade level. But, you know, they're really proud of being in this district since kindergarten, most of them. And it's such a small, tight family of 70 kids. They are it's a special group of kids. So we'd love to see whatever we can do.
Sure.
We'd love to see
Thank
something
you.
go on for them.
Thank you. We're open to suggestions too.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? This is the time to raise your hand. Again, you can get to the hand raise by going through the participants list. At the bottom of your screen, if you click on the button that says participants and then look at the list of participants at the bottom, there's a button to raise hand. Currently, we have no one raising their hand, but we'll wait a minute if anyone else would like to speak. Mrs. Harvey, I still see no one left to speak. I think we're probably safe to move on.
Okay, does anyone have any other business to discuss?
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Gail.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you for joining us this evening. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.